Hey Dream Media Colorado, it is Chase back for another episode. So recently you guys saw me build this mock-up double window frame for a really hardcore deep dive into not only the options with Lutron, but specifically shade installation, how to set them up, how to pair them with the Pico remotes. So over here, we have a lighter fabric sheer version of a Roller 64 that's running over a power module on the side you guys saw me install, and then using wireless communication to talk to this Pico. So this is an example of maybe if you bought a house and you're renovating it, for some reason they ran speaker wire to the shades, this would be your solution. You'd have a power module, preferably back in your rack, in one of those enclosures that can power up to 30 shades in a single panel instead of one per dongle. As well as a wireless communication module that we showed the install on. If you didn't catch that, no need to worry. We're going to be doing that all again, but we're going to start off with an unboxing of what will be in our Roller 100 dual mounted pocket installation with blackout tracks. Now this is one of, if not the most daunting shade install for an on-the-ground installer, and I just want to let you know ahead of time, this project is about process and capability, not about looks, okay? Because the scale of this, you would never have this shade solution in a scale this small, but for this to be a transportable platform, it has to be. As you can see, the pocket, which I'm holding now in here, is going to take up a lot, so it's going to be pretty funky. But if this was a 12-foot high window or something like that, you know, like we have a lot in Colorado, it would look pretty good at the end of the day. So just wanted to get that out of the way. But yeah, we're going to have two shades, a sheer that's free floating and a blackout that's in a blackout track here. So without further ado, let's get into this video and start unboxing our gear. All right guys, so we are going to go ahead and start with our two shades. Just get them unboxed so that I can clean up the area as we go. We'll get everything laid out and then we'll take a deep dive into this install process. If you've never tried one of these, it's a pretty cool process. You've just got to measure everything twice. If anything goes wrong, the shade will not operate properly, and that starts with the squared window frame that we built. So here in front of me, I've got a Sivoia QS Roller 100, which is the type of roller, and this is our blackout shade. So the other shade we open is going to be a sun sheer. All right. As we went over in the previous video, everything has a ton of foam, packaged very well. Lutron is awesome about that. Now these dual rollers are going to come with their brackets installed. Well, the mounting plates. Okay, so there's a bracket that you guys are gonna watch me install in here, but I'll just bring this up. See, so there's a mounting plate that hooks in to the actual bracket in the window that makes this magic work. And again, we've got our hardwire communication and power link here. I'll bring that up close. And our wireless dongle link for wireless communication. So just as we did in the 64, because this is a temporary setup and it's portable and it's going to be running off wireless Picos without a central processor or central power supply, we're going to be just using this Phoenix connector for our positive and negative power draw, and then we will be using this for our wireless module. Now what's cool about what you'll see today is we're going to use, I'll unbox it in a second, but a secondary wire harness that allows me to hook up the full Phoenix connection with communication, get it back to my rack, or in this case, it'll be on the side of this window frame here without having the 2 wires start here. So essentially this will be unused on the shade locally. Then we'll hook up both our communication and power to this Phoenix connector. That will leave this window enclosure, and then we will split out power to our fixed 1 shade power module, as well as communication to our wireless dongle. For this install, the wireless dongle will be installed remote. So you guys saw me break this down. Our wireless dongle is hidden up under here. You know, there's no valance here. So this isn't a finished product, just a really good look at what goes into it. And since it will be remote, it'll just be remote right here. But of course that can move close to a central processor, maybe back to a wiring bay, back to your centralized rack for control. So again, just a quick caveat, we will be using wireless communication, but in this instance, we will not be using the wireless communication built on there. So what you'll see me do is kind of wrap up and zip tie this out of the way and stuff it up into our pocket mount as we get going. I'm gonna have to get a camera up here. Most of my work is gonna be hidden recessed today. But anyway, here's our Blackout. You will get to see this. And what I think was cool with this layout is you get the best of every world. I'm gonna be able to have a sun shear that I can still look through to the outside, but with a bunch of privacy. This, you can't tell the transparency well because I closed this window. We were getting too much light interference. But if this was on a window and the window is open, you could still look out, get a ton of privacy, no one can see in, and helps you control the light, you know, a good bit. And then we'll have the Blackout that'll completely block out light. And something you may see right here, and this is a caveat of any inside window mount, is that there is a light gap, right? Every shade has a light gap when installed inside the windowsill. So you could take this same shade, order it to overlap to where the brackets hang on the very outside, and then you put a valance up on top of the window, and you could get a light overhang, a fabric overhang onto the window frame that deals with a good bit of this light gap, but it's never perfect. So that is what we'll be unboxing the light tracks for. And again, in this box, we've got our shade. We've got 2 Lutron end caps for our hem bar. Those may be replacements. Nope, so I'm gonna have to install those. But again, we're gonna leave this wrapped up so that it doesn't get damaged by the install process till the very end. We've got a manual here for setup, as well as our Phoenix connector that goes on the incoming wire side. And then we have our wireless dongle kit, which again is going to have the mounting hardware for the wireless dongle, the instruction guide, and the wireless dongle itself. So we'll go ahead and get that all out of the box now. I'm gonna go ahead and leave these zip ties as well as the 2-inch screws. Every shade ships from Lutron. It'll ship with the 2-inch screws and some small zip ties. Given the fact that this is an open frame for display behind me, if we were to go ahead and do that, use the 2-inch screws that you should be using on your in-the-field installs, then I'd have about a ½ an inch of screw sticking out at every mounting point, and this would become dangerous quick. Not only that, but if I use the 2 inches here, it's going to pop out into this next bay, maybe hit the motor, cause some issues. So in this wireless kit, we've got 2 little stick-ons for wire management, as well as a stick-on plate that lets you temporary mount this perfectly before you screw it in. I have seen people just leave the shade wireless dongles on the sticky 3M tape. That's great. That's not a solution that's gonna last 10 years with every day the sun beating the window enclosure and heating it up and then it cooling down. Eventually, your adhesive is going to lose integrity and botch this process. So that's our first shade out of the way, and we will organize these components. Again, that's our Blackout. And what's cool about this is that's not an actual black fabric. Of course, You can get a blackout in any fabric color, which I don't see people talk about too much, but you can have a black sun shear and a beige blackout, like if that is your speed. In future videos, we'll be breaking down a good bit of the fabric selection in the Classicum edition of Lutron's fabrics, but there are hundreds of fabrics to choose from, specialty fabrics. If you have seen a Lutron fabric you like and your technician at Dream Media doesn't recommend it, it may be because of seams, right? So Zach's house, we've got 12-foot windows, 14-foot windows in some of, on the bottom floor and like 12-foot up ice theater. Well, not every fabric can be that long without a seam. So if you're looking at a blackout fabric, and I recommend against it, that towards the bottom or the top of the shade, maybe 3 or 4 feet from the top, you'll have a fabric joint because you've reached the limitations of that fabric's length or width. And then you'd have like a seam across the bar. So if we run into one of those issues, we may recommend against a fabric selection you can choose from. And if you're insistent, we'll let you know why, but that may be why you're not given every option depending on the size windows, because it may even just be one window that the seam is needed, but if it looks bad and it's not gonna pass your test, why would we recommend that for the rest of the home? We wanna pick a fabric that works everywhere and has a great design. So this is a version of a light shear. I will probably, in my breakdown of this when we're done, shine some lights in the back, let you see that light gap. I've got headlamps that push 700 lumens to 1,000 lumens, some of them, so we'll take some different brightness lights and try and get that to shine through so you can see some of the light that will come through this fabric. So now the second shade is our shear. And again, I'm sorry that you're not going to get to see the shades until right when they get hung. That's just kind of the nature of hanging a shade properly. Now, when you go through Lutron courses as a technician, they have you unroll the shades and the fabric is too expensive to mess around with. Leave it wrapped up. All right, so again, we got our foam, and because this was ordered as a dual roller, we've got our roller harness mounts already installed. And then on the shade, so I know exactly what the shade is without opening it up because they've got a nice read down of every part of this order, shade or blackout, because otherwise these look pretty identical. And then it's the same exact hardware kit here, so we're gonna empty everything out so that I can clean up as I go here. Again, we're gonna just utilize black zip ties everywhere. And again, these screws are great. They're just too long for this demo build. All right, wireless kit, wireless dongle with the mounting infrastructure, as well as our 4-prong Phoenix for a wire coming from outside of the box. So, all right, we can get this out of our work area. Now, you saw me bring this on screen before. This is the pocket recess. So a lot of times every pocket recess shade I've done has been on actual lumber finished by a carpenter. This is one of the metal options that comes from Lutron. So inside this housing will be both of the shades, as well as our wiring, some of it, right? I said we're gonna use the 4-prong Phoenix to get our 4-conductor Lutron wire out of the box, and then here on the outside remote for this install will be our wireless module as well as our power module. So this is that pocket that'll enclose the whole build. Now this is the pocket, I guess you want to call it not cover, but it's just a clip-on piece that I'll show here just roughly what it would look like. Okay, so what this does is keeps me from being able to be near the window and seeing up into my pocket mount. So we'll break this down more. Okay, so here's my pocket and my pocket cover. All right. So now I'm not sure why these pockets from Lutron come with no screw holes, but obviously there's no way to mount it currently. So we're gonna have to do all that. We'll break that down, best practice for measurements on where to punch these holes, where to punch your wire hole for it, and all that goodness. Most likely for this build, I will go ahead and pop my 2 mounting holes, mount it, then measure over my 6x1 and then cut it. We'll see. As long as you get it done, it's not that big of a deal. So again, here's our pocket and our pocket flange cover. All right, and we broke these down in the last video, but we'll go ahead and go over it again. These are our one-off power supplies. These really aren't used in the field much. Honestly, because at this point, if you're doing some kind of wireless only solution, I'd really push you towards Palladium wire-free from Lutron. They're stunning. They have a great battery life. They may not be. If anyone from Lutron's watching this video, correct me. They might. I think they're quieter than the Sivoia QS line. Maybe that's just my experience in the field. Maybe I'm crazy, but the Palladium wire-frees are great. The only caveat they have that I think is a weakness compared to other competitors like Screen Innovation is that they take D-cell batteries only. So depending on the shade width, now a shade in here may only take 6 batteries, but you can get them up to where they take 12, 8 standard, and then there's extension packs. They are getting to a point where their wireless shades have an 8-year battery life, but what I love about Screen Innovations is it's a lithium battery built in that could be replaced down the line. So when it comes time that once a year, once every couple years, depending on how you charge them, you just plug in a little wireless, it's like a cord with a magnet on it. It pulls itself up to the Screen Innovation screens, charges it, and then you're done. The big caveat with that is it's a lot cheaper long term because 8 D-cell batteries is literally like $40. So just imagine if you've got 50 shades, all of a sudden that's a huge bill and a big labor bill every time it comes to replacing them. Whereas as shades start to go with some of the rechargeable lithium solutions, you can just knock those out yourself. And if you're not comfortable with the ladder, it's a lot less service time to have somebody come out, maybe a housekeeper, a house manager, property manager, plug them in. And then since it's magnetic and not toggled, kind of like the old MagSafes from MacBook and Apple, you can just pull it down. So it's not a 2-step ladder process, both are one. You get up, and that's the other thing. When you're doing the Palladiums, you pull it forward, you got to change the batteries in the air. You just got to get that cord up there with some of the lithium solution. Anyway, both are great options. Both are getting better. Lutron is the standard for a reason. They are dead reliable. The Palladiums are beautiful. No valance needed. As you get them, you order the correct metal finish you like, you order the shade material, and they can be a showstopper in the room without any coverings. If we could put some B-roll of some of the Palladium wire frees from my Colorado, one of the homes we discovered in Colorado recently, that would be great on social team. Anyway, so here's our QSP 135 volt. So what this is going to do is just power a single shade here. And we've got a second one for our second shade. Now something that's weird about this model number is the model on the device is a little bit different than the model number listed on the box, but it is the same in same product. So when you're looking at your box, it's a P1 135 or QSP-P1-1-35 volt on the box. Once you open these up, the model number says QSP-1-35 volt. I'm not sure why there's that discrepancy. It doesn't matter, it's the same unit. But if you see that, don't get freaked out and think that Lutron sent you the wrong product. It is the same thing. So here we've just got a little bit of hardware and end cap plugs, just to make everything look pretty at the end. Now, as I told you, we'll be using the 4-prong Phoenix adapter in the box and then remotely splitting the wireless. That is what this dongle does, which is a QS-YC adapter. So we have 2 of these, 1 for each shade. So you can see we'll use a 4-wire to come out, and then down here we'll split to just power and just wireless communication. You can see this Phoenix here is only wired for power currently. There are no comm cables in that 4-prong Phoenix. So there are 2 of these. I'm going to open up the other one really quick. Okay, so there's our 2 splitter adapters. This is a pretty simple bag, so we'll just knock it out. This is our Lutron shade wire. So here's a caveat. If there are plenty of brands out there, if you aren't sure, every major competitor to Lutron has a communication solution that accepts this 4-prong wire or 4-strand wire because it's so common. So let's just use Screen Innovations because I just talked about them. Screen Innovations, you can run them off a cat. You can run them off a wireless with just power, sort of like we're doing here. Or they have an order type where you can utilize this 2-power, 2-comm cable that Lutron pulls. So typically, if I know that the client wants some type of shade in the future, but we're not at that point, or maybe it's a let's get the house built, we'll come back for the shades, I always run this 4-2 from Lutron. It's great. It's a very durable wire, and there is a sync. No one's going to say this is best practice. I've seen some botched shade jobs in the field with shorted wires, and I'll tell you what, someone might smack me for this, but there's a sync in here. Just a metal wire that's not insulated as part of the rest of the 4 conductors. I had a shade where a wire was cut. It's 150 feet from our rack. It's not possible to retrofit, nor in the room, because it was window, was there a place for me to hide it well without a valance. So you can, in a very, very tough pinch, send communication over the sync. It's not insulated as well. It's just got the outer sleeve jacket insulation, so you are definitely more prone to interference of any type at that point. But as I'm stuck here, you know, the only option for the homeowner is for me to order wireless converters or a local power module, and then to wait, and then me come back to install. You can try that. Please don't ever use that unless it's a last resort integrators, but you can. So technically there are 5 strands in here. The sync to ground the wire can be used in an emergency. And just as an example, that specific shade botch where the carpenter putting in the wood valance afterwards blew up my white comm wire. We were able to use the sync. That house has been running for 4 years, no issues. Again, not recommended. But anyway, here's our Lutron wire. No matter what shade you're going with down the line, if you're into luxury shades, pick this up. It is harder for Lutron to conform to pulling a cat wire versus having another brand like Screen Innovations convert to utilizing a Lutron wire. So play it safe, run Lutron 4.2 for all your shade needs. That goes for builders, integrators, and homeowners. It's a little more expensive, don't cheap out. So here we go. We have our 4-button Pico here. So you saw me unbox our 3-button Pico, which is great for single shade control as well as single group global control. Now this is our Pico option for controlling. We went with the 4-button here because I've got a discrete open and close button for shade 1 and 2. I'll bring it closer in a second. That's going to be huge for us as far as controlling the shear and the blackout in the back separately. So I'll bring that in here. You can have these custom engraved, but because this is just a, you know, you can have this say fireplace and, you know, entry, or whatever the shades would be for that application. But just wanted to show here, they're just labeled 1 and 2. These Picos can be engraved. And since we broke down this in the first video, I'm just going to finish setting up the Pico while we do it. Here is our Pico tabletop pedestal. So these do mount, Picos can be floaters. Picos can mount into faceplates on your wall, just like a light switch, so that they just kind of natively fit the vibe of your house. And then there is the pedestal option, which is my favorite for, let's say you got a guest bedroom. I run into this a lot in Colorado. Guest bedroom, really big triple window. Well, if I've got one shade on that, I don't need a 6-button keypad for the room. So you can go ahead and just put shade control right by the bed where it's most needed. I'll bring the pedestal in again. Okay, nice rubber back Lutron imprinted down there. This rubber grip just keeps this from sliding around. It's really sturdy, like surprisingly. The base is weighted, you know, if you bump it, it's not gonna slide easily. Little piece of plastic wrapper there I'm gonna discard of. And then again, just like our other Pico, I'll bring this in close to you guys, we've got this plastic cap here because this was meant to, you know, so this is how you'd run it as a floater, and the battery compartment's back there. And this just slides right in, clips onto this, and now this feels like a nice finished product. And we will go ahead and just put that on display for, actually, I'm gonna pull this down because I'm gonna be drilling and all that goodness. So we'll set it over here. But again, let me show you the interaction for a single shade or single shade group control with discrete up, down, and stop. You know, so I can hit close. Actually, you guys can watch it. So I'll hit open here, and I can stop it anywhere. Then I can use my up down arrows to micro adjust it. All right. Whereas this one, because we've gone with a 4-button 2-shade control, we really just have a open close for each shade. You can also run a 4-button as open, you know, 25% closed, or like 33% closed, 66% closed, fully closed. So you can do some hotkeys. If you're controlling one group and the shades always move together, I love having those discrete up-down buttons. And you can take this through a step further. We showed off in one of our Colorado builds that has palladium lighting. They're tied to Lutron keypads that have shade buttons, and they're part of the 6-button keypads. So I also have a discrete up-down button. So once you touch the shade, you can still get that micro and macro feel. But because we don't have a central processor here, and because this is a portable rig, we're just gonna wirelessly pair these with our Picos, which we'll go through at the end. We broke that down in the Roller 64 install video. All right, so here we've got this big box, or big bag covered in foam here. So what is this? This is all of our main brackets, as well as our mounting hardware. And again, we won't be utilizing these screws, but if you're a technician, you have extras of any of this, save it. It comes in handy, especially if Phoenix breaks or something. If you throw out Lutron hardware, chances are you're gonna regret it at some point. All right. So I'll just open up one and show that off, then I'll unwrap the other one. As you can see, very rigid construction that can be mounted to the front of a pocket, to the back of a pocket, or up to the pocket or to the side. So Lutron has really thought through everything. And you see these 2 channels here, right there and there. That's actually where these shade mounts will clip in. So after we're all installed, this just clips in. Well, that's the wrong orientation. They clip in. Oh, they clip in like that. And then you have an anchor screw to hold them in place. Now, obviously that's very hard to show on camera, but this is what a dual roller bracket. So it's a meaty bracket. You can tell it's a huge bracket. So any dual roller solution, it is absolutely necessary to have some sort of valance covering, whether it's the stock one from Lutron. As you can see here, the bracket fits right into this pocket enclosure. by design that's going to be a little proud of the framing structure that I have behind me. But again, this is just a travel kit. So there's our second one. Go ahead and tuck all this trash back into our bag. And then we've got one more piece of gear to unravel here. Very exciting piece of gear. Our track sliders. This is really that end game adjustment. And Zach and I, actually in another Breckenridge home recently, showed off both dual rollers and single blackout rollers in a hybrid media game room with the track sliders for 0 light gap. So what I have in my hands now is actually our light gap tracks. Okay, so this one's a little dinged up. If it looks like that when you receive it, just go ahead and run your hand up and down the mesh, straighten out those hairs. So here we are. And yes, it's bulky. Yes, it cuts down the view of the window by about 4 inches total. But as you can imagine, this is the right length once we've got that big box in here, but this will go all the way up. Your hem bar will always seat inside of these, and that just ensures there's going to be no light gap on the corners like we have on this Roller 64 drop-in. You can see because it's an inside mount and not some sort of outside mount that was ordered long, there's a pretty egregious light gap. But that's you know, there's a light gap with any type of blind, shade, unless when you get into drapery, you can kind of get rid of light gaps. This is the end all be all solution though, to having a very high-end shade with no light gap. This, again, perfect for a media room, perfect for a theater. Maybe you run the same dual rollers everywhere in your home, but specifically in your recreation zone, maybe in your office where you don't like light bleeding, but specifically a media room theater, that is the best part of the Lutron lineup, in my opinion, is just absolutely getting rid of the light gap. So we'll get into that shortly. Thanks for joining me for this unboxing of a Sivoia QS 100 roller. So the 100 roller line are thicker than the 64 roller line. You don't really need to know that unless you're a technician. They have different applications, different uses, but this is going to be a shear and blackout dual roller install inside a recessed pocket mount with light gap closure. It's gonna be a sweet install. We're gonna jump right into it. All right, time to get into this. So first things first, we have to actually prep our pocket. Let me get my bracket out of here, and I'm gonna stage some of the stuff over on the side. That way it's not so messy right in front of me, especially the product we won't be utilizing for a little bit here. Okay, both of our wireless modules, everybody's got their goodness. And just to check. Okay. All right. And they call this the flap, I believe. I remember I was kind of botching the name earlier. Yeah, so I was calling this like a clip-on or something. This is called a pocket flap. All right, so this is, I love Lutron. I probably always will. Lighting and shades, they're the best at it, and the most luxury at it. But this pocket didn't come with any holes, and while I get that there's no hole for wire placement because that changes install to install, I do not see a reason for there not to be the 2 mounting holes. Regardless, it's pretty easy. So we will find our center marking of said pocket. Then we're gonna measure 6 inches in, and we'll pop 2 3/16 inch holes to go ahead and mount this, as well as from the right side, so right drive motor. It can be a left. In this instance, I think, wait, are these right drives? That wouldn't make too much sense. You'd think this would be a left drive. It is a right drive. So I'm curious why this kit doesn't come with a left drive for this configuration, given the fact that this one came as a right drive, right? You would think that this, if you were ordering this as a shade installer, you would want to have measured and ordered this as a left draw, so it comes into the window frame closest to the point of install. All right, guys, sorry about that. I just had to confirm that. A little funky to me. That is what it is, though. So we'll go ahead and keep cruising here. Going to make sure I have my pencil. All right, cool. So maybe I'll face this towards you so you guys can see me work a little better. I do have these 2x6 blocks underneath just because I will be drilling through and I would like my carpet to stay intact, which is another reason why I think these really should come from the factory already pre-drilled. They don't, regardless, we'll continue on. All right, so center mark on this is 3.5 inches. All right, so this is about the only shade install that no matter how much of these you do, you really need to take your time. So this is gonna be facing the front like this, and this will be my room side. So since this is my room side, I'm gonna, if you remember before, we came 1 inch in and 3 inches over. I mean 6 inches over, 1 inch in over here to get our wire in. We're gonna follow that same protocol on this bracket over here. So what we'll do, and I will use a tape measure for this given the circumstance as soon as I find my tape measure. All right. So next thing's next. The next part of our process is for me to find my anchoring screws. There we go. And my drill that has the hardware we need on it. I can clear some of this out. We will need measurement tools, but we should be done. Drilling through metal. We will need to pre-drill post pocket install up through the top of the lumber here so that we can get. Now this is a lot easier done, these pocket installs, when you actually have a window frame, right? Because then I can just bump this back all the way and it'll touch the window's sill. Since I can't do that today, I don't need to do this for this, but I guess I kind of want to show off a trade trick when trying to get something aligned. I can go ahead and tap a screw or two into the speed square, into both of my speed squares. Now, ideally I'd have them in the corners, but if you watched the assembly video on this, we tacked the whole frame together and then we used a series of T and L braces to actually square out our structure enough. Because if you watch that video, you know that all the wood I have access to this high in the mountains is extremely warped due to how dry it gets once it's transported up to nearly 10,000 feet. I think my lows is a little over 7,000 feet in altitude. So this may be hard to see, but there are grooves all over these speed squares. Nice and flush all the way across without having to measure, thanks to the second hands from my speed squares. And I'll bring this up to show you guys really quick. Basically, I used that slit right here and this slit, not all the way in the corner so I wasn't burning up the metal, but basically that's how it mounted on both speed squares. Now some of them, these don't, will have holes for tack nails or something like that. Sorry, I'm not sure if you guys saw that, but essentially right there. And right there. If you're doing something with bigger framing, obviously that's the go-to. Anyway, the second, that's helpful when you're maybe framing a deck or anything where you need two hands and don't have one, or trying to square something up. So definitely not needed for shade install though. All right. So we've got our pocket in here. I'm gonna bring this forward. I don't know how to film this honestly, so I think we're going to tilt, and I think I'll bring in a boom from the back possibly, and I'll work from the front. I think that's what we'll do. We'll see if we can get a good angle. Whoop. All right. Don't, cardinal sin, don't touch the fabric with your hands, nor should you move a shade enclosure with the shades rolled down. So that was very smart of me. Our power cord's free, yep. Now this is getting harder and harder to move because I can no longer get my hands under the framing, but okay.
To be continued in part 2. Watch part 2 for shades installation, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.